And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We're talking all things Andretti, and oh my goodness, yes, it hasn't quite imploded with the news, but everyone is talking about it in the F1 world at the moment. It's been quite divisive. I think a lot of the fans are perplexed at the best of times, I think, to describe how they feel about it. Like me, being a massive F1 fan, a massive motorsport fan, I'm really disappointed that the Andretti name is not going to be in F1 potentially in the foreseeable future. Maybe in 2028, but let's get into the full statement. The full statement on F1's decision to reject Andretti's bid for 2025. So as we know, Formula 1 has rejected that bid in our breaking news video not too long ago, and having come to the conclusion that it doesn't meet the criteria to be the 11th team on the grid, here's the full statement. So, yes. So we've got Andretti Cadillac application to participate in the F1 Championship introduction. Now on March the 22nd, 2023, the FIA published an invitation to apply to participate in the Formula 1 World Championship. As we know, Andretti was among them, as you can see here too. The FIA announced on the 2nd of October that they were satisfied with the application. They were satisfied with Andretti's application. They'd fulfilled their selection criteria in all material respects, and that accordingly the FIA considered that the applicant should progress to the next stage, being an assessment by the commercial rights holder, basically Liberty Media, of Formula 1. The process set out in the invitation provides that both the FIA and commercial rights holder must consider an application suitable in order for a new entrant to be selected. So at that point, everyone thought it's going to be go. The FIA, 1.3, had previously shared with us material submitted by each of the 4 applicants in response to the invitation. Following the FIA's announcement, we wrote to the applicant on the 10th of October, setting out the assessment process, and there being the process letter, which contained a list of questions to the applicant. Point number 4. Now, having had the opportunity to consider the applicant's responses together with deliberations, they subsequently wrote to the applicant on the 12th of December last year, 2023, extending an invitation for an in-person meeting at our offices, but the applicant did not take up this offer. Okay, it was an invitation to an in-person meeting at our offices. They didn't go. Doesn't mean you should, just because you didn't go, I guess it doesn't mean that you should completely stricken them off. Otherwise, I imagine Andretti would have gone had they said, if you didn't attend, we're not going to give you, we're not going to say yes to you. But I digress. And number 5, this document summarises our review process and the key conclusions arising from it. So here we get into the meat of the sandwich, so to speak, or the cheese of the sandwich, if you are a vegetarian, or vegan cheese even, but the main part of the sandwich. Shut up, let's carry on. So, as contemplated by the process letter, we took account of the broad range of ways in which value could be provided, including, it's interesting, value to fans. Yes, the prestige and reputational value of the sport, okay, the competitive balance of the championship, and the sustainability goals of the sport. The key areas of review were A, consideration of the likely competitiveness of the applicant's entry and its impact on value. That one is going to be really subjective. No one really knows until it is, and until basically it's going to be the first qualifying session in Bahrain in 2025. B, consideration of the applicant's arrangements with respect to the supply of power units. The rumours were they did have an Alpine supply almost guaranteed, but I believe the date of that being agreed went. But let's be honest, Alpine have no one else in F1 running their Alpine/Renault engines. I'm pretty sure when it came to it, they'd have been more than happy for Andretti to have the Alpine engines before, obviously, in 2028, the General Motors engine, for example, is made, which is, long rumored to be made. C, research into the potential benefits of that the applicant might bring in terms of fan growth and fan engagement. Okay, Andretti is a massive name in motorsport, in Formula 1. I mean, Mario Andretti is a world champion. Michael Andretti is a podium finisher. He raced him for McLaren. Okay, wasn't the most successful season, but across down in karts or IndyCar, he is he is a big name. He runs teams in America as well. So Potential benefits the applicant might bring in terms of fan growth and fan engagement, as well as a review of the equivalent materials prepared by the CT Group on behalf of the applicant. Okay, so I think fan engagement, once again, a tick, in obviously my humble opinion. D, consultation with key stakeholders to understand their view of the value that the applicant would bring. I think an 11th team, I think everyone thinks they bring value with the Andretti name. The fact that General Motors are behind them with General Motors money. E, consideration of the operational impact on our existing circuits of adding an 11th team. Okay, well, the Concord Agreement has room for an extra, I think, 2 teams. So that shouldn't be an issue there. I know Martin Brundle was on the Sky Sports, was on Sky Sports during this breaking news segment and intimated as such that there is room for an 11th team. Brad Pitt had, for example, at Silverstone, Brad Pitt's Lewis Hamilton's F1 movie, they had the extra garage. That's not going to be an issue. F. Let's carry on. Consideration of the likely impact of the applicant's entry in the commercial rights, financial results as an indicator of value. Now, is that basically you've got 10 teams, with an 11th team there's going to be less of this financial pie, this prize pool pie? Yes, I guess, yeah. That's going to be potentially a negative. I get that. Consideration, this is G, of the applicant's financial sustainability based on the materials provided. The FIA, I think the FIA process was very succinct, very clear that they felt they had enough money. And once again, you just need to look who their backers are. Now, 7. Our assessment did not involve any consultation with the current F1 teams. However, in considering the best interests of the championship, we took account of the impact of the entry of an 11th team and all commercial stakeholders in the championships. Okay, yes, there was no official assessment, but let's be honest, most of the Formula 1 teams, nearly all of them, made their opinions very clear that the majority did not want Andretti in Formula 1. They did not want an 11th team. Not just Michael Andretti. I don't think they wanted an 11th team at all. General, number 8. Our assessment process has established that the presence of an 11th team would not, in and of itself, provide value to the championship. That's why. Why? Maybe they digress with that because that's going to be more people. Interestingly, Martin Brundle, again, I refer to, if you want to have a look at it, it's on there. It's on the Sky F1 YouTube channel. He said, at the moment, an 11th team would be quite exciting because we've had with Leclerc resigning for Ferrari, Norris resigning for McLaren, both Mercedes drivers pretty much, they are signed up, aren't they, for the foreseeable future. An 11th team would bring that intrigue and interest. And it would be an extra team that you could have, some of the drivers to go. No, so number 9, any 11th team would show that its participation and involvement would bring a benefit to the championship. The most significant way in which a new entrant would bring value is by being competitive, in particular by competing for podiums and race wins. Okay, this would mathematically increase fan engagement, yes, and would increase the value of the championship in the eyes of key stakeholders and sources of revenue, such as broadcasters and race promoters. And you have an 11th team, you have more cars. The only issue, I think, is it's very subjective and it's very difficult to say how competitive they will be. But the fact they are already getting people, they've got that base in Silverstone, and they have over a year to do that. And if you remember, Toyota had over a year, and their first F1 car was fairly good. They had a lot more resources, but bearing in mind, obviously, we've got this budget cap now as well. Number 10. The application contemplates an association with General Motors that does not initially provide a power unit supply, true, with an ambition for a full partnership with GM as a power unit supplier in due course, again true, but this will not be the case for some years. Having a GMPU supply attached to the application at the outset would have enhanced its credibility, though a novice constructor in partnership with a new entrant PU supply would have a significant challenge to overcome. True, most of the attempts to establish a new constructor in the last several decades have not been successful. Most of the attempts to establish a new constructor in the last several decades have not been successful. Toyota, I'd say, were fairly-ish successful. I mean, they went in the mid-2000s, didn't they? We had Mercedes in 2009. They'd been quite successful. You could consider them a new constructor. Honda have come in. They weren't successful with McLaren. Yes, it was just an engine supplier, but they are very successful with the Red Bull team. You've got Audi coming in, albeit, yes, Audi have brought The Sauber team, you could make an argument they are a new constructor, albeit they've obviously, using the Sauber. So I don't really think that one holds much water. They could have that Alpine power unit supply. Yes, they could. I mean, if you remember at one point, Red Bull did not have a power unit supply. Renault were like, see you later, and they were struggling. F1, you wouldn't have that argument then. I appreciate it's slightly different, but still. No, absolutely not. Number 11, 2025. This, upon reading this, I do believe they've got a point here in this point 11. 2025 will be the last year of the current regulatory cycle, and 2026 will be the first year of the subsequent cycle, for which an entirely different car to the previous cycle will be required. The applicant proposes, as a novice constructor, to design and build a car under these 2025 regulations, and then in the very next year to design and build a completely different car under the 26 regulations. This is very true. Further, the applicant proposes to attempt this with a dependency on a compulsory supply from a rival power unit. I don't know why they say rival power unit manufacturer. Yes, because isn't that what... I mean, the Stake F1 team that are currently, I think, sort of owned by Audi, are currently doing... there's Audi staff there. I appreciate that's a bit more of a grey area, but you can certainly say that this could be a rival power supply unit. So I don't quite think they're being complete hypocrites here, but you can make an argument. It is in that genre. The applicant pursues its ambition of collaborating with GM as a PU supplier in the longer term, which is a compulsory PU supplier would see as a risk to its intellectual property and know-how. I mean, we've changed people all the time. Honda obviously went to Red Bull. Now they're Red Bull power units. Now they're coming back in to Aston Martin. But shock horror, Aston Martin currently have the Mercedes engines, even though we know they're going to Honda. Is that going to harm their intellectual property? There we go. I mean, what? Number 12. We do not believe that there is a basis for any new applicant to be admitted in 2025, given that this would involve a novice entrant building two completely different cars. That one, I do agree with. It's going to be very difficult, especially for a new team. And the fact that the applicant proposes to do so gives us reason to question their understanding of the scope. While a 2026 entry would not face this specific issue, it is nevertheless the case that Formula One, as the pinnacle of world motorsport, represents a unique technical challenge to constructors of a nature that the applicant has not faced, true, in other formula or discipline in which it has previously competed, and it proposes to do so with a dependency on a compulsory PU supply in the initial years of its participation. Obsessed, aren't they, with this power unit? I do agree. Maybe they should have just said 2026 will be your first year, not 2025. We'll accept that. It's called compromise. Formula One. We do it all the time. I mean, look at all these street circuits that you have and all the compromises the fans have to make. Number for the love of their sport. Number 13. Coming to the sport as a new PU power unit manufacturer is also a huge challenge with which major automotive manufacturers have struggled in the past, and one which can take a manufacturer a number of years of significant investment in order to become competitive. GM have the resource and the credibility to be more than capable of attempting the challenge, but success is not assured. No, success is not assured. I mean, if it's successful, that's why Toyota, BMW, Honda, have like fledged an interest in F1 and then left. Obviously, there was that big crisis as well. With money, back in 2007, 2008, 2009, but they obviously looked at it and thought it is not worth it. Honda pulled out after obviously winning with Red Bull in 2021. People leave all the time. I don't really understand what they're so obsessed over there. Now, conclusions of the commercial assessment. Yes, can you call them conclusions though after those 13, unlucky for some points? I don't know. Number 14, our assessment process has established that the presence of an 11 team would not on its own provide value to the championship. I think, in my opinion, it would. The most significant way in which a new entrant would bring value is by being competitive. Subjective, we don't know. Maybe, though, to be fair, they know more than us, thinking they're not going to be successful. Maybe for 2025. The one point they make that I'm going to find really, really hard to argue with, and I think a lot of people probably will, is the fact that they are designing that 25 car and they need to design the 2026 car as well, which obviously not impossible, but it's going to be difficult, and that could have a massive exclamation mark, let's say, on their competitiveness. But in talking about competitiveness, if I told you William Rocket Williams 2019, Haas 2020 and 2021 even. You know, I mean, the 22 Haas was good. The 2021 Haas, no, it wasn't. You know, those teams weren't competitive. Yes, they had already obviously got in the club, so to speak. But it does smell a bit of hypocrisy, maybe. Number 15, the need for any new team to take a compulsory power unit supply potentially over a period of several seasons would be damaging to the prestige and standing of the championship. What? The need for any new team to take a compulsory power unit supply, it is a new team, over a period, but you are allowing it. I mean, you have customer teams. McLaren, you know, Sauber, I mean, the Stake F1 team is a customer to Haas. Williams, what are you talking about? Would be damaging to the prestige of the standing. Well, okay, yeah, whatever. Number 16. While the Andretti name carries some recognition for F1 fans, our research indicates that F1 would bring value to the Andretti brand rather than the other. It would bring value. Yes, it would bring value, but this is why you go to Formula One. Why do you think Mercedes have gone to Formula One? Because F1 will bring value to the Mercedes name. It does work both ways. If you remember, F1 used to be win on Sundays, sell cars on Mondays, was very much the reason why a lot of car manufacturers have got into Formula One. It's the reason why sponsors come to F1. I did not know who Petronas was. You know, you had Sauber Petronas, and now they were sponsored. They sponsored Sauber, and then they sponsored Mercedes. I didn't know who they were until they came into Formula One. Formula One helped that. It's, you know, it's a symbiotic relationship in relation to that. I see those sponsors on the cars, I'm going to know them. That's why people come to Formula One. I mean, point number 15 and 16, Number 17, the addition of an 11th team would place an operational burden on race promoters. And this would subject some of them to significant costs and would reduce the technical, operational, and commercial spaces of other companies. Yes, it would. It would, maybe, yes, I guess it would put some burden, but they got the garages there. Once again, the Concord Agreement allows for more than 10 teams. So this is essentially saying an 11th team is never going to happen anyway, irrespective of it being Andretti. Number 18, we were not able to identify any material expected positive effect on the CRH financial results as a key indicator of pure commercial value to the championship. So we were not able to identify any material expected positive effect on the financial results as a key indicator. Okay, moving on. Number 19, on the basis of the application as it stands, we do not believe that the applicant has shown that it would add value to the championship. We conclude that the applicant's application to participate in the championship should not be successful. Yes, obviously. And here's the maybe 2028. We would look differently on an application for the entry of a team into the 28 championship with a GM power unit, either as a GM works team or as a GM customer team, designing all allowable components in-house. In this case, there will be additional factors to consider in respect of the value that the applicant would bring to the championship, in particular in respect of bringing a prestigious new OEM to the sport as a PU supplier. So maybe 2028, they're just pushing it forward. Why not just say 2026? Other teams have our customers. Okay, I mean, this whole thing, it almost reeks of someone fresh out of kindergarten with a thesaurus trying to justify in an essay why we shouldn't have Andretti and focus on that. None of the positives, absolutely. Let's just focus on Andretti not being. Write me an essay, children, of why Andretti shouldn't be allowed in Formula One, and making no points. In my opinion, very few valid points. I get the 25, 26, obviously the rules coming in if they're in here in 25, completely understand that one. Everything else is a massive, massive question mark. I don't understand it. I don't think it holds much water. I mean, motorsport.com, F1 rejects Andretti entry for now, but door open for 2028. Andretti's hope for securing an F1 entry have been dashed. Yes, indeed, they have. However, a lengthy statement of why FM did not justify a spot. It was made clear that the scope for it to grab the 11th slot in 2028. Why? because they can, I guess. I mean, when you actually read it, it said as much as they didn't want Andretti, as much as they did not want an 11th team, without obviously a power unit supplier. But there are customer teams. I mean, the people like Mercedes, they have to have available other engines for their customer teams. It's just, here we go, the 3 factors that led to Andretti. The applicant did not take us up on this offer. Okay, well, we didn't turn up to a meeting. Okay, that's rude. The double challenge enforced by the 2026 rules. That one, yep. Motorsport, I completely agree with you there. The engine issue, one of the aces up Andretti's sleeve, well, it's GM's engine issue, it says here. The long-term ambition is for them to produce their own power unit, absolutely. However, such a move is only possible from 2028, absolutely. It did originally have a pre-contract with Renault, pending on it securing an entry to the grid, but has lapsed, and since then there have been no progress. I still think they will have, and F1 suggests that Andretti is instead relying on securing a compulsory engine dual, which is effectively a mechanism in the FIA rules whereby current manufacturers can be forced to supply teams, customer teams, if they have no. Well, yeah, it's the rule. It's a rule. I mean, it is effectively a mechanism in the FIA rules. You say it there yourself. In the FIA rules whereby current manufacturers can be forced. Okay, it might look a bit embarrassing, but it's a rule. Rules are rules. The same rule that obviously that Lewis Hamilton breached at Brazil 2021 with his DRS went to the back. It is a rule. I mean, the cost cap is a rule. There's punishments if you break it. This is a rule. But while this would give Andretti access to an engine, it says, from one of the current, F1 noted this would be far from ideal because of the team's long-standing links with GM. And the applicant process to attempt this with a dependency on a compulsory supply from... Yeah, but at the end of the day, you've got Mercedes in the Aston Martin, if they're going to use this, taking the information from another power unit source, and they've signed a deal with Honda. So no, that adds no water, adding value. The demand for any new entrant to bring added value to the grid is repeatedly mentioned in the statement. It is something that the current teams have spoken about many times, even though they were not consulted at all by FOM. But as we know, they all made their opinions very clear, and I'm sure they did to Liberty Media / Formula One make their opinions very, very clear. Instead, F1 spoke to other stakeholders to work out what value Andretti could bring to fans and its impact on the series and the competitive they spoke to. Who do they speak to? They concluded the best way was being competitive, but this is something that other teams are struggling with. You're always going to have the slowest team, aren't you? And it also added the need for a new team to make a compulsory power unit, potentially. Why? Well, then take that one out of the rule. The rule is they can have a power unit. Get rid of that rule then. And then you would have sorted this out, but it's ridiculous. And it says, and while Andretti's name is big in motorsport circles, FOM suggests F1 would bring value to the Andretti brand. Yeah, but that's just, once again, absolutely ridiculous. That's why people go to Formula One. Otherwise, what's the point? You wouldn't have big sponsors. You wouldn't have big manufacturers. That's why they go to Formula One. I don't get it. Why? I mean, okay, take this out. Renault became Alpine because the Alpine name that no one knew about, they wanted it to be exposed more. Did Formula One turn around and go, no, sorry, you can't name it Alpine because, the F1 brand is going to do more for you than Alpine is the other way around? No, it's absolutely reeks of hypocrisy. A massive hypocritical pie that the F1 has potentially had here. I just don't understand it. Obviously, they've got their reasons. They feel they're right. They are the bosses on the sport. They can do what they want. Is there going to be backlash from the fans? Absolutely, there's going to be backlash, I think, from the fans. It's just absolutely, I think the points made, some of them, the biggest one I think is the 25th to the 26th one. That's the biggest exclamation mark, and I completely understand why their 2025 thing would be rejected, but I wouldn't understand if Andretti turned around and said 2026. I do not understand why that would be rejected. But there we go. Anyway, if you like, I'm sorry, maybe that was too much of a run, but if you made it to the end, you're definitely a multiple world champion. You're better off than the Andretti at the moment, and I think F1's potential reputation going forward as well. But this is a developing story. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to have to eat that humble pie and there's going to be real good points made. Maybe Andretti will come out and say, yes, we completely agree. It may be the opposite, and I will eat my humble pie absolutely 110%. Until then, I am scratching my head, Formula One, as to why you've done this. Maybe, okay, for the good of the sport, fair enough. I get the other teams. They have made a few points, but I think they haven't made enough points to convince me. Anyway, this humble one-person fan, let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.